traveling spouse was someone who you might find in a diplomatic post where their husband has been posted abroad, or a military post when they're a military wife, that kind of thing. But it's changing a lot now. So I would see it as someone who went on not as a non-working partner, who possibly couldn't actually work in the foreign country that they were in, or have any either need to, desire to, and was basically there as a support network for their husband.
Right. I mean, we started talking about this last week because of an article, BBC article, and somebody, I think it was somebody who was asking for advice on, you know, what they can do. They had gone with their spouse who had gone on an international assignment and moved abroad. I was finding it very difficult to kind of, you know, fit in or find things to do, or like, you know, feel like, you know, that they had a life of their own kind of thing. And a lot of the advice was mainly do what you normally do at home.
Yeah, it was. It was very strange and kind of, it was way too practical, because the person was obviously feeling like, this isn't really working for me in the way that I feel. But the advice was kind of like, well, you know, go to the shops and buy something.
Right, exactly.
You know, order off a menu. And it's just like, well, you know, I think you're probably doing those things already. I don't think that you need advice at that level.
Yeah, I find that very weird. Order off a menu. Like, that's somehow something people don't do when they go abroad. How do they get food then?
Just sit there and look at the waiter.
Yeah. And then the waiter brings up and then they just shake their head no.
No, please, take it back. Yeah.
So yeah,
it's kind of odd.
It made me think though about how, like, a lot of the suggestions were, you do this yourself, find time to do this, join this yourself. It's kind of like the subtext being that, well, your spouse has the job and the international assignment, so he or she has the already fulfilling life.
Right.
Which may not be the case anyway.
Yes.
But I think you've got to think of it more in terms of a partnership. I think that in one way people look at it like, you know, from an emotional point of view, and say, like, you get a lot of advice like, oh, it's very healthy to have your own interests. It's very healthy to have your own life. You need your me time.
Yeah.
And things like that. But if you're now going for, you know, starting out on an international assignment, you're not going to be able to build that right away. And you're going to find, I think, they're going to need a lot more support than you thought you really ever did.
Well, isolation is one of the big things. And going out, yes, will mean that you're not isolated, but it can be incredibly frustrating to go out on your own without somebody else. So, I mean, you probably do need the buddy system a little bit. But mostly you need a sympathetic ear, I would say, to many of the emotional issues. And I think expats are not saying, I can't do this. They're saying it's so odd to have these life experiences abroad. You know, like, simple things become much more complicated.
Yep.
And the support that you need is not because you're incompetent in any way to get that done. It's just that sometimes it's not really obvious. It's not straightforward in a foreign country. And saying to someone, everything is brand new, just go and do it yourself, would really, I think, overwhelm them and just create the sort of issue that I don't know what to do, and I went out to try to do it and I couldn't do it. So I want to go home because, you know, I really don't know how to achieve this here, and there's nobody to help me. You know, I'm supposed to be able to do all of this on my own. And that's really the wrong message to send to somebody that you're inviting as a company or a spouse to go with you and be abroad with you, enjoy that time, because that's obviously going to be one of the least enjoyable experiences you could have.
Right.
Yes, now I feel incompetent and I'd just like to go home.
I think that, and you spoke about this earlier about it being a legacy of the traveling spouse, I think that of the international assignment in how they used to be, which was they were, you know, strictly the corporate jobs.
Right.
And, you know, for the salaried employees, and, you know, you put on the suit and go to the office, and if you're on an international assignment, you do the same thing. And, you know, it's not really, apart from maybe like, you know, entertaining or something like that. It's not done as a team with you and your spouse. But I think that, I mean, that's changed. Obviously, you know, you're going to go to another country and find that the corporate system isn't like it was in the 1950s, just like everywhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you work from home? Can you have a home office? Is that a thing, you know, an option for you? You know, does everybody still wear a suit, or can you go into work with your jeans and sneakers, and like a lot of people in tech startups do. I mean,
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of options for you in a global environment, especially if you're going somewhere with good internet connections. Then pretty much you have a lot of things available to you that you wouldn't have before. And it doesn't have to be choosing something that maybe you think is personal. And I think that that's the message that's wrong. This isn't about your personal experience. This is about a sort of experience of the international assignment. And it has to be managed very differently than a personal experience. You can't just say, oh, I'd love to write a book, or oh, I think I'll just blog all the time, or oh, I'm just going to go and sit by the pool for 2 years or something like that. Obviously you're going to find that some of these things are going to be frustrating and unfulfilling. And what seems like a great idea when you're sort of envisioning your life might not be at all what you wanted when you get there. And I think that that's what experienced expats understand about going abroad with their partner, is that you have to be really about your couple's experience of what you do in a foreign country. It can't be, corporate roles and supportive spouses.
Right.
It's not the right
as we said,
interaction.
We were talking, it's really about a new kind of entrepreneurship.
Right. I think that that's very helpful as an analogy for getting people to understand what would it be like if you were running a business together, as opposed to you're trailing behind someone with whatever they're doing.
Right. And you kind of, lots of people haven't ever been in a small business with their spouse, but that takes a lot of planning, a lot of cooperation. If, let's say you're running a restaurant and it's a family restaurant and everything like that, everything that for the restaurant, the ordering, the accounting, all the preparation, hiring, firing, all has to be done as a team. And that's when you have to say, well, I've got my life and I like it. I've got my me time. I've got my separate interests and things like that. Families that are in small business together often don't have that luxury or that ability, because they've got to be with each other all the time, making sure when they're not when they're on the clock, when they're off the clock. And that's kind of what it'll be like, I think, for people to
you
find.
Need to think of yourself more like a unit.
Right.
How do we support each other? What kind of support do we need to give each other? Do I need to go out and make it easy for us to go to dinner today? Or do I need to, sort of talk about, I was learning this about the country, and you should know that because that's important for your, job security, job stability. Is that going to be an important role that you play? And it's much more important for you to get that right. Know what's going on in the environment around you, how the environment is changing, and get things out of this assignment for yourself.
Right.
It's just really important that both parties get their assignment right.
Definitely.
And it's not, if you talk to a lot of people, I've been asked that question, what should you encourage people to do? And there's lots of things that people encourage you to do. You should take another degree, do some social work or social responsibility work, that kind of thing. But in the end, if that's not who you are, then these are all very sort of isolating things as well. Not everybody wants to be an academic, but people do want to be part of each other's lives.
Right.
And when you go abroad, that's your sole source of support, your partner. So you've got to find a way to build that support network, like between you, that somehow it's important that you actually relate to one another, how you speak to one another, what kind of goals you have as a couple, and what you're going to do to help each other when you're there.
And so often the onus is on the spouse that's not on the international assignment, especially if that spouse isn't working as well. Right. Then the onus is to say, well, you've got to entertain yourself. You've also got to support the person because they've got their day job and they're going to the office. And,
that's free, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so the person
there's no time whatsoever, and it's absolutely free.
So the person on the international assignment should, if. By the way, everyone, if the computer moves, it's because the cat has just jumped up on the table.
We're wondering if he's going to come around.
He may.
Here he comes. No, he's sitting down. Okay. All right, good. Well done.
I was just saying that the onus on the is on the spouse that's not on the international assignment, but it's often it's not the fault of the one who's on the international assignment that they're not maybe contributing enough, because oftentimes international assignments aren't set up by companies to enable that.
Right.
So they don't want you to find a place that maybe would be better for you and your whole family versus a place that's just close to the office. And they expect you to be in certain, hours, send you around to meetings and things like that may not, that they might not normally ask, other employees, local employees to do.
Yes.
So oftentimes,
you might have a very different lifestyle than the local employees, and in some areas you're going to have to accept that as normal. And I think that people who send you abroad, this sort of idea that you could go to the local shops on your own might be something that you just can't do or shouldn't do. It might be dangerous for you to things, but you still have to have a life while you're there. You can't sit home for your 10.
Right.
You can't sit home all day and just twiddle your thumbs and think, well, what am I going to, what's my life about?
And especially if you're getting a living allowance, because that can kind of also breed some resentment. The other employees are like, and even in management, they'll be like, they say like, well, we're already giving you money to live here, for free. What more do you want? And, that might not be enough. That's part of the compensation you negotiated. But there tends to be looking on things in international assignments that should be considered standard compensation. They're actually considered perks and treated like perks, and that you should be grateful for this, and then do what you can to kind of make up for it, do the extra work the extra hours, volunteer for everything. And that's sometimes not very conducive to having a family life when you're trying to live abroad and with people who,
you didn't want to move there on your own, right?
Right, exactly.
It's one of those ridiculous things where, if you're on your own, you're more likely to not have the support you need, and if your support network is there, you're most likely to ignore them.
Right. And it's an international assignment. It's not an internship.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's kind of something that's been difficult for companies to understand. Through the HR departments haven't had enough. I think it's a way of looking at things that's totally different than they're used to. So I think that HR departments really need some kind of insight into how would you support your marriage or training in this way. I know some people get therapy and stuff like that before they go. And I don't mean that and we've got problems. I mean that is, how do we deal with a situation that's coming up that's difficult? Because it's not a normal situation. So you can't treat it as though it's going to be a normal situation. There's going to be very different needs on your relationship, and even just communicating what's happening to you can be a very difficult interaction with people who have no idea really what you're talking about, because they don't live there, they don't experience what you experience.
They have no common frame of reference.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how do you help someone do that? So, I mean, a lot of things can be about tools that help you reach people, just sort of a way to deal with their problems or know their problems before they do it, a way to fix problems, problem-solving skills that you might not have to have at home or have never been required to have. I mean, I know that's my personal experience of sort of moving abroad, is that there were personal skills that I would never have been required to build while I lived in my home country. And that just became so transparently obvious when you think, oh, I can't manage this. I don't even know why, like what's missing and why is this going on? So it's a big learning curve for you. It's a totally different culture. It will be huge to grow. And I think huge in terms of the way you treat each other. And I think that's what we're trying to get the core of what we're trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, it might be just as simple as just asking yourself to start with, would I ever start a small business with my spouse?
Right.
Because if the answer is no, never, would never consider it, would not get near that, then maybe, you might not be ready for the amount of work it's going to be to go on an international assignment.
Right. I mean, because it does, and that's one of the things that it provokes, is that a lot of expats and international assignees will say that they come back and leave because they can't get the sort of responsibility they got when they were abroad, or the environment, people don't recognize how their skills or how this experience changes them. And, obviously HR departments need to figure out how to acknowledge skills they don't develop in you.
Before these people all come back and start opening family restaurants.
Yes. Well, I suppose that's one thing.
Yeah, exactly.
You could do that.
So we're interested also in what you have to say. If you have any comments or questions on this, you can always reach us at doshibu.tv.
Absolutely. We'd love to hear it from you.
And thanks for watching.
Thank you.